and welcome to Tiny Changes Big Podcast. I'm your host, B. Charlotte. This podcast is all about bringing you real talk and insights from the music industry, with conversations from those who actively live it. We will cover less discussed topics like finance, identity, public perception, and how attempting to survive this unregulated industry impacts our mental health. Together, we'll explore the rhythms of mental health, the highs, the lows, and the steady heartbeat in between, because your well-being is the foundation of your creativity. So come on in, everyone's welcome. This is a two-part episode where we're tackling some big topics from the artist and industry perspective. We're diving into the risks of the music industry, its lack of regulation, and most importantly, what can we actually do about it. Today, we're delighted to be joined by Katie Waissel, an artist, activist, and founder of the platform OWHL.
Before we jump in, a note on our content. This podcast will discuss and explore some difficult subject areas. We want to make sure you're aware of what's coming ahead, so you can decide if you're in a good place to listen and make a healthy decision on how and if you want to consume this podcast content. This episode includes discussions of exploitation and predatory behaviour in the music industry. It explores the unsafe conditions for artists in professional settings, the impact this has on mental health, creative burnout, and the significant trauma related to the music industry. It also highlights the legal vulnerability and a lack of employment protection that has created historic injustice and harm. We want to encourage you to think about how you look after yourself during and after the episode, and listener discretion is advised. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the guests and the host and are intended for informational purposes only. They do not constitute professional mental health, legal, or financial advice. So now you know what's ahead. We hope you join us and enjoy this episode.
So I'd love to come to you now, Katie, and we have this view of the research, and I know you've got a lot of first-hand knowledge and experience. You've been in the music industry from quite a young age, in your 20s, travelling across the US and Europe with your music, and this in itself is what a lot of our young artists dream of. That's what they're aspiring to. So I know you have a lot of experience, a lot of first-hand knowledge, and considering this, I'd like to ask you, what red flags would you recommend young people to look out for?
Wow. I think first and foremost off the bat, I don't want to frighten anybody. It's incredible that there are so many young artists out there following their heart and their passion. And so I'm sure, anything that's discussed today, it really, as I'm sure you guys have already mentioned, it doesn't have to be that way. And I am so grateful that this podcast is even happening. Some of the red flags, unfortunately, I didn't see. Looking back now, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? The scary thing is that these red flags are so secretly hidden between what looks to be, either a great opportunity or tied up into contracts. And I was just so excited to do music that I didn't see the wood from the trees. But looking back now, like I just mentioned, some of these red flags are hidden in contracts. It's expensive, incredibly expensive to get a lawyer if you've been offered either a deal or either by a record label or management or whatnot. But there are so many resources out there, including especially this podcast, that the things to really look out for are making sure that you, as in the artist, musician who's signing it, is mentioned first and foremost, that you have your terms and rights included in that it's not really like a one-sided contract. So I would absolutely highlight that. And also that somebody is going to invest in you because they actually believe in your music, not you as a template for them to then strip you of your craft and turn you into something else. So, but at the time I didn't know or see, and that's completely understandable. But I would highly recommend that people, know their worth. Even as a session musician, don't be afraid to charge. I know that obviously, like finances are tight as an upcoming singer, songwriter, musician, and so on and so forth. But there's lots of grants that young musicians can get. But also, don't be afraid to charge a fee for your talent and what you're providing.
And when you're talking about in terms of contracts and stuff, it is such a minefield. Like, the music industry is really complicated. The simple parts of it are, we make music, we record it, we release it. Fabulous. If that was what it was all about, then we'd be, you know what I mean? And we made a bit of money from it. Hallelujah.
But that's what it should be all about. That's what it should be all about. And so, the main word here that stands out is business, music business. So there are the creators, which are, yourself and many others listening, and me formerly. But there is a business side of things, which leads me on. I mean, we can talk about it a bit later, but it's also important to learn and understand about how the industry works as a business, because 99% of the time, when you're signing contracts, you're signing as somebody that's either self-employed or you're entering just a contract for service. So you're not protected by employment law or anything like that, which leads to such a grey area. But with the future of music ever evolving, my advice would be set up a small company so you yourself can be protected. It costs literally next to nothing, quite simple to do. And register yourself as, just a small limited company or an LLC. And, put things through your company. Even if you are signing to a record label, management, put it all through the company. And you'll see many managers or record label execs, what do they call it, squeaky bum time. But you've got to be serious, because there is a business aspect to it, and you've got to protect yourself.
Yeah. And I think as well, like what you're saying, sometimes the shiny allure of it all, you forget the serious business side of it sometimes. For myself, when I started out, I guess, performing and writing songs and stuff, I had firstly no idea what the music industry was. I had no access into it. There wasn't like this door that just opened and I could jump right in. Like, I had no clue really about how any of it worked. And I went to study music business at college, because I didn't know. I was like, the performing side of it, the writing songs, I do it every day, I love it, or as I said, my DNA, so to speak. But the business side, I've not got a clue. So yeah, I went in to do that, and that was helpful for me to sort of start differentiating stuff. And there's a lot of different topics covered in that, and that was really, really helpful in that way. And I think I was just going to say as well, when we were talking about red flags, and I mentioned it to George as well, that gut feeling is such a huge thing. And there have been many times where at the start of something or at the beginning of this, and I've got this gut feeling, but you go, nah, you know what I mean? Ignore it. It's going to be fine. These people know better. They've been in the industry longer than me, or they know what they're talking about better than me. But like gut feeling, red flags, that's something I've definitely really learned to try and do more, is follow that gut.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I can only speak on my own experience, but when you're in a position where you feel like you've got nothing to lose, 10% of nothing is nothing, and this is your everything and all you've ever done and all you've ever known and wished for, you're in a vulnerable position. I've been there myself. I signed a napkin in a Hollywood bar once, many, many years ago, and it was legally, like, it had legal standing. But at the time, I was like, woohoo, this is really exciting. But I had nothing to lose. And it's not until later on, when you do have something to lose, be it either your back catalogue of music or your songwrites, or, from a monetary standpoint, then you realise just, oh God, I was just completely taken advantage of in a very vulnerable situation for somebody else to profit over what I wanted to do.
No, totally. And I was just thinking as well on the contract side of things. So for anybody listening or watching, the Musicians Union is a really great resource, and they do have contract reviewing services that I believe if you're a member of Musicians Union you can access for free, which is really good, because a lot of times, as we're saying, when you're a musician, and rightly so, focusing on the creativity, the music side of it, and you might receive a contract and you think, I do not know where to begin. So that's a good resource, just thinking there, if anybody's needing free legal advice, basically.
They can always come to me. My messages are always open. Ping me an email, even if it's just to take a look over it. But I'm currently working on my website also, just to kind of create like a cheat sheet of what to look out for, certain language, but not to kind of go into it too hardcore. It just needs to be understandable. Also, if anybody offers you a lawyer, if you're again in a situation, fingers crossed, that you're offered a record deal and they say, well, our internal lawyers at one of the big record labels will deal with everything, that's not good, because it's not independent. It's a conflict of interest. So please make sure that you choose your own lawyer. And there is a way to, like, this is the funny thing. It's not funny, it's terrible. But people are so frightened, and so was I, to open my mouth in case I lost an opportunity. But if they want you, they should, even if they were to pay towards an independent lawyer that you choose, you have every right to ask for that. Do you know what I mean? But it's scary, because, again, these people in positions of power take advantage of us in a vulnerable position, and that's not right. So know your worth, know your rights, and you have every right to ask for what you deserve.
In your view, how can you begin to hold people to account in the early days of your career, whilst also still aiming for your dreams? Like what you're saying, it's scary to do so, but how do you, how do you recommend that, in a sense?
I absolutely hear what you're saying, and problem solved, because I founded my company OWHL. It stands for Overseeing the Welfare, Human Rights and Liberty for All in the Creative Industries, completely independent, where every member has to go through a rigorous verification process. So we are exactly who we say we are, because going into a venue or a meeting or wherever, it's frightening right from the get-go before we even go into contracts and stuff. So it's important that people are who they say they are. We're building personal safety alarm features. So God forbid anybody finds themselves in a situation, unfortunately, that I was in 2015. There is a panic button on the lock screen of your phone, which is connected to your in case of emergency persons you've already put on your profile on the back channels, on the back end. It's actually powered through an amazing company called Panic Guard. But also when it comes to reporting on your member profile, but again in the back channels, you're able to anonymously report, because I know it's very scary to put yourself out there in fear of being blacklisted. And what OWL does on the back end is we collect the anonymized data, and we work with lots of different companies, from TV production companies all the way through to the major record labels, indie, are really just branching this out to venues and so on and so forth. We then take the data that's anonymized, share it with them to be proactive rather than reactive. But if, God forbid, there was a situation where somebody wanted to flag it up, they would be able to do so in a very secure and encrypted way. So it's all very exciting. I'm just putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So bear with. But if anyone's got any problems, there's so many charities, mental health support. My inbox is always open. I'm here if anyone needs. I can signpost you to the right people. But it is being done. I won't let it not be done.
Yeah, and it's really brilliant, Katie, that you've been able to turn your experiences and turn pain into power, really, and you've empowered yourself beyond belief by what you've gone on to do, and studied law. Is that correct as well? And now launching OWL as well. Like, it's a platform that's very well needed, and I think a lot of these things, when similarly with Tiny Changes, and when we're talking about Music Minds Matter as well, when these things come from a real experience or they come from something really real and heartfelt, it makes a whole lot of difference. Because as an artist, you can put your trust and faith into that they understand. Like what we're saying, we have shared perspectives on things, or you can understand. It takes away a little bit of that barrier of, you think, oh, they're not going to understand me because of this, or it sounds silly, or it sounds insignificant, and all of that stuff. But yeah, I just have to say it's really brilliant what you're doing, and I look forward to seeing all that is going to do, and we'll definitely link to OWHL as well. So from creating this platform, so you've told us a lot about it, what is the real change you would like to see from creating OWHL and putting this platform out there?
The real change I would like to see, or we will see, is that every single one of us in the industry, whether you're a musician, a singer, a recording, on the back end of things, like a producer, anything to do with this industry, everyone has a fundamental human right to be safe and protected, but also everyone has a right to seek justice, and for there to be absolute trust and transparency in the industry all round. And if I can prevent wrongdoing, even a fraction of what I unfortunately and others experienced, then I would be so honoured and so proud. Look, I can't do it all by myself. It's a team effort. That's why I always say it's not a me thing, it's a we thing. But if I can even make a dent in a positive change, I would be very, very proud and honoured.
Yeah, and which you are. You most definitely are, and already have done. And I think as well, it's like when we're talking about these resources as well, like Music Minds Matter and like OWHL, and I think it's sometimes hard, and what George has said as well, like, is the reality, the fakeness versus the reality, in terms of when we're talking about specifically online as well. So you see the highlight reels, you see or even just person to person, artist to artist. You're at a gig with another artist, you're like, yeah, everything's going great, it's all going well. It is, like I said, it does feel embarrassing sometimes to admit, doesn't it? Because you think, oh, I don't want people to think whatever, and it isn't a one size fits all experience. So say it's an artist has a positive or negative experience within the industry, whether that be with a label or any aspect of the industry, it doesn't mean it's obviously the exact same for everybody else. But it's so important that we can have these conversations and talk about the things that are tricky, so that our up and coming and young musicians can go, okay, I feel well equipped, I feel more prepared now. These things could happen. Things, you know what I mean? I know what I kind of need to look out for. And I think it's about, like what we're saying, we're not discouraging anyone. I'm so conscious of that, as I know you are as well, because at the heart of it is our love for music, is our love for creativity. And as George touched on, sometimes you can lose that joy, and that is the sad reality as well. But ultimately, for me, what brings me back every single time is writing a song, or is that feeling that you get inside that's like undescribable. But then
yeah, I still do it.
Yeah, great. I mean, but then you can find it in other ways, can't you? Because for me, there was a time when I went through a period of time where I really struggled to write songs, or I could not listen back to my own music. I could not do it. I was just like, I couldn't do it. So then you start to maybe find that spark in something else, whether that be for myself in doing teaching, or starting a record label, and like yourself with OWHL, and you get to fight when you help someone, in that you can help someone or contribute to somebody's career in that way. You also get that spark, don't you? You also get that that buzzy feeling that's just as good as when it's for yourself, but when it's for someone else, I think as well.
Right. No, I couldn't agree more. And it's funny because even though I'm not front facing in the music world, I'm like looking over at my green guitar in the corner here, because I play guitar and piano. I love writing songs. I write silly songs for my son to embarrass him. Once when he had the chicken pox, I wrote the chicken pox song. But there's also a lot of pressure on young musicians and artists. You've got to write a hit. You've got to write a hit, and it's like, hang on a minute. I'm writing songs because I'm enjoying writing my songs. It's just a lot of pressure. So I understand writer's block, or when one is critical of their own work. If that ever happens to me, which it has done many a time, like yourself, obviously, that you get creativity and that warmth by doing good for others. But try not to be too hard on oneself. The best advice I would give on that, though, a little bit kind of out of the box here, but it is what it is. You gotta go through it to get through it. You will get through it. You will write another song, but maybe that's time just to have a bit of a rest and refill the tank, with some new ideas. And but please, whoever's listening that's experiencing that, don't be hard on yourself. It will come when you least expect it. When you're in the car and then you're tapping away on the steering wheel. I wrote a Christmas song. Just a quick story. So I didn't play the piano for years after the X Factor. I was just so traumatized by music and everything, and I just hid myself away. And then when I moved back to the UK in 2018, I think it was 2020, because this was before I reported to the police what happened to me. It's 2020. And I said to my mum, right, I'm ready to start playing again. And I got myself a Yamaha digital, like full size. It's just so cool. And I started noodling on it. Well, you noodle on the guitar, but I just started playing around on it, tinkling on the keys. And then it brought that spark back. But I was in the car taking my son to school. And I remember it was coming up to Christmas. And I just started singing out of nowhere. And then Hudson's my son, we wrote a song. Literally in 10 minutes, we wrote the song called Believe. And it was actually also sparked by, I watched Graham Norton interview with Simon Cowell, where Graham Norton said, a little bird told me. So I said to my son, a little bird told me. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then we wrote a Christmas song in the car that was on the short list for the John Lewis advert last year. Mind-blowing. I didn't get it though, not yet. But see, the smallest things can lead to massive opportunities. I can't believe I just sung a little bit of it.
I love that. We've had a teaser. No, I love it. And I think what we're saying, inspiration can strike at those most random moments. And obviously when we're talking about the risks of the music industry and the unregulation of it, and a big part of that, obviously, as we've discussed with George and his research, is mental health aspects. And a big part of that can be the creative side of it too. So all the other stuff that can be going on can then ultimately impact the reason why you started doing it in the first place. And like what you're saying, you go into these writing sessions and you've got to write a hit song in 5 hours. Well, there's a lot going on in my brain, and I don't know. Yeah, and also a hit song is subjective to whoever's thinking it's a hit song.
Exactly. And I have ADHD. So you try keeping me in a room for 5 hours. It's terrible. I'm like a bouncy ball. I'm like, what's happening? And then we'll write 5 different songs in the 5 hours, and then none of them are finished or anything else like that. But yeah, it's a lot of pressure. But look, I'm neurodivergent. I say that my son is also neurodivergent, but it's a superhero power. But it can be tricky. So again, in the studio, make sure there's nothing to be ashamed of if you're on the cool side of the street with our superpowers. So just make sure that you say something so that you can get those breaks that you need.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And advocating for yourself is such a big thing, isn't it? And there'd be so many times when I first went into I know we're going off onto writing here and we're in the industry, but still, I guess, when I first go into writing sessions, I'd be so nervous that I wouldn't actually be able to really contribute much. And then I'll be like, oh God, they're going to think I'm rubbish. But it's just because I'm scared. But then those aspects lead into it all, and then you've got in the back of your head, you've got, well, the record label's wanting this hit song and all of that, so then you've got that, and it kind of, I guess, impedes it all. But I think I don't want to take us off topic.
I do have a cheat sheet for this. No, I have a cheat sheet for this, which is, okay, first and foremost, before you go into any writing session, really define the terms of the song splits, right? Or what your role is. Are you writing top line? Are you writing lyrics? And make sure that's written down somewhere in an email. And then this goes to my cheat sheet. None of us want to be the bad guy, So there's nothing wrong with setting up, not to say anybody should lie, and I'm always talking about transparency and stuff, but I've always been transparent that I've done this in the past, where I've been my own assistant but under my middle name, so I'm like, oh, speak to Lauren about that, I'm here to write, and then Lauren, who's actually me, would write the email and say, just confirming the song splits. There's a way to go about things as if you don't have a manager, but if you are feeling nervous, I mean, I've done it. I actually once called up Atlantic Records when I was in New York, pretending to be my own assistant, to say, did you know that Katie is doing a show on this date and make sure that you're there? They had no idea it was me. And they came. It was cool.
A lot of artists have done that. A lot of young artists that I've worked with or speak to as well. Everyone's at some point has set up a wee.
Are you saying I'm not original? No, I'm joking.
But no, you're not alone in that, because and what George has mentioned a lot of as well is the financial side of things and how hard it is to make a living from music. So then when you do get offered a gig and it's a great opportunity, say it's a really great support slot, but they're offering you £30, for example, it's really hard you want to say, well, absolutely not. I know my worth. I don't want to do it. But I know from talking to a lot of young artists that they've just done it because they're scared they're never going to get that opportunity again. Somebody's going to take it away from them if they don't take it. And that's a whole other thing in itself, I guess, is there should be some more regulation in that side of things where we're not playing for exposures. But that's such a big part of it, isn't it? Where you're scared to go, no, actually, do you know what? I'm not going to do that because I would lose a lot of money. I guess, we're talking about legislation in that way and the industry and that's the live sector is one part of it. And there's obviously so many moving parts to the music industry. For the longest time, we would have the recorded side of things, recorded music, and we would have the live industry and obviously our, I guess, intellectual property as well. But now, obviously, online is like the fourth big factor in terms of the aspects, isn't it? It's such a unpredictable route now.
I always say register your works with PRS and MCPS. Back in my day, I used to have to burn it onto a CD and post it to myself. But yes, make sure you register everything, even if it's a song idea. But going full circle back to one of the first things I said, if you register yourself as like a limited company, for example, there is nothing stopping you from licensing your work for people. It's another great way to protect it, but also to monetize. Like in the gaming world and things like that, people are looking for music all the time. And with this whole AI malarkey, don't get me started. It's probably another podcast for another day. But I would recommend just to register your works, put it through your company and license it out. It's just another revenue source as well, but also you then have control over where it goes and what happens with that, rather than someone, I don't know, going on YouTube or Spotify and illegally taking it or copying it or something like this. But also, it's another exciting avenue that a musician or a songwriter can go down without having to go and get a record deal for that. Because the record deals these days, as I'm sure you know, they're quite 360. And I'm sure that they have updated their terms and conditions in their contracts with NFTs and tokens and everything in it. It's why it's just important to stay educated, but also one step ahead of the curve. And I think if one was to register their works, license them out, give people an opportunity, you're still in control of where that goes and who uses it. I would definitely recommend that.
I think it's super important we have these types of conversations. We talk about the difficulties, the hard times, but also it's important and empowering, as we're saying, to find the light, to find the reason to keep going. We know that it can be really alone, how alone and isolated you can feel as an artist. So a question for you really is, how can, we've kind of gone into this, I guess, a little bit, but how can musicians protect themselves? We've kind of gone into that already, I would say. But second of all then is, what changes do we need to see within the industry? What changes would you like to see?
Well, the biggest change that I would like to see is truth, justice, and accountability for historic victims. Because we need to set a precedent. We need to lead by example to the big bad wolves out there that you know. I mean, look, there's, I think, just shy of 2.4 million people in the creative industries in the UK alone, that we are a community and we band together. The biggest change I would like to see for us as we the people is that we can be safe and happy and just enjoy what we're doing, and not have to worry that if, God forbid, something happens, then no one's going to listen, no one's going to understand. Again, we are one big community that supports one another, and I want to just share with everybody listening, I know that I can't change the world all by myself, but I sure am doing my best to make those changes to better everything for everybody else, and your help also would be so great.
So if you could make one tiny change following on from our discussion, whether that be for young people or for the industry, what would that be? It can be something you've already mentioned, or is there something else? Just one tiny change.
The one tiny change, and that actually came from you. I'm really, really, really glad that you pricked my ears up to it, is pushing for legislative change for artists in live performances and making sure that they are paid correctly. I've learned a lot from you. So adding that into my list of what we're fighting for here, it's small but mighty.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Katie. It's been really, really lovely to have your insight and your time. We really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Katie, I just want to say thank you so much for your contribution to this topic. Your honesty and openness is really, really appreciated, and is just incredibly valuable to have your artist perspective. There was also a lot that lined up with our other part of this episode, where we're talking to Dr. George Musgrave about an industry perspective of regulating the music industry. And to our listeners and viewers, thank you very, very much. We'd love to know, what do you think the music industry needs to change most urgently? You can join the conversation on our socials. It would be great to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and keep making tiny changes that lead to something big.
If you've been affected by anything that came up in today's episode, you can find a list of resources for reaching out for help in the episode show notes, or you can check out Tiny Changes support page at tinychanges.com/support. Thank you to our great host, B. Charlotte. Music produced by the brilliant Barry Jackson. Podcast artwork by the amazing Berwin Muir. Technical production by the very talented Ross Sloan. This podcast was created and produced by Kayla Megan Burns and Nina Abisoria for a Tiny Changes pilot production.